도 사방아 sabje khange kapso inaya tene dushe tamchi mita pa yinpa ta saje tamchi dunga pa yinpa ta chu tamchi tongshi dame pa yinpa nyangane dewa shiva chimbo yinpa te domchi shile sha ne te tela jeba shindu jeba rabdu jeba rinpe tene takum chunde sabru jeru
The Buddha teaches that everything that is conditioned is impermanent, and he also teaches that whatever is defiling is painful. He teaches that all phenomena are empty and devoid of self, and that passing beyond suffering is great peace. So in this way, the Buddha's teaching bears these four seals or these four marks. And at this place of Kushinagar, the Buddha displayed the way, or gave an example of the impermanent nature of conditioned things, because this is where he, in the perception of others, acted as if passing beyond into the expanse of the abiding nature and passing entirely beyond suffering. And this is something that he did in order to inspire beings at the time, and not because in actual fact that Buddha comes or goes. His body is indestructible Vajra body, and so he displays in the perception of others acts that lead and guide sentient beings. So out of compassion, our compassionate teacher made this appearance of passing beyond to show the impermanent nature of conditioned things. First, he had, in the same way, displayed the way of taking birth as a supreme Nirmanakaya at Lumbini, and in the palace in Kapilavastu he lived as a royal prince and showed the way of the enjoyment of the pleasures of existence. Then, leaving the palace through the eastern gate, he left out of renunciation, and he also received ordination from himself. He then proceeded to pursue the spiritual path, and he trained in a number of ways in order to develop meditative absorption, liberating meditative absorption. All of this again as a display of deeds of enlightenment in order to guide sentient beings. So he also undertook hardship, and then finally giving up the kind of hardship that he had seemingly been pursuing, he left for the Vajra Sea at Bodh Gaya and conquered the demons and attained true and complete enlightenment. On the Buddhist path, one is to go beyond all extremes. So the extreme of pursuing hardship is to be abandoned, and so is the extreme of lack of discipline, and so is in fact the abandonment of hardship, because there has to be a sense of balance in one's life as a practitioner. That one has to do things that are conducive to developing meditative absorption and experience and realization. So a certain type of discipline is required, and the Buddha taught that in the teachings of the Vinaya, he gave the guidelines of a lifestyle whereby one can, in terms of diet, in terms of one's deeds throughout the day, live in a way that does not give rise to great disturbing emotions, and which is in general balanced and provides a good support for calm abiding and special insight. So this is what he presented in the teachings of the Vinaya, and so also when the Buddha had attained enlightenment, when he proceeded to teach, the Sangha began to form, and this Sangha of the followers of the Buddha became an example for people to look at and admire, to become inspired by, and so the Sangha became a field of merit, an unsurpassable source of merit and object of veneration and offerings. And it is the code of the Vinaya is generally conducive to spiritual experience, the codex of the Vinaya, but it's also something that arose in relation to the time and the environment, and in this way the Buddha gave 253 vows for a monk, a fully ordained monk, and 364 vows for a fully ordained nun. In this way, providing the general outline for the life of the Sangha, for their outer lifestyle. And in India, that became the primary model for a Buddhist practitioner to live in that way. Inwardly, some would then practice the Mahayana, and on a very, as if a secret level, they would abide by the great vehicle within the great, which is the secret mantra of Vajrayana. So the Buddha gave tremendously many and diverse teachings, all adjusted to the recipients of his teachings. Some teachings were directly spoken for the sake of ordained monks and nuns, novices, or fully ordained monks and nuns, and others were spoken for people who had not received such ordination, who had received Buddhist vows, but not of that sort. So there are practices which are meant for monks and nuns, and others which are not. In this way, a great array of skillful means were revealed by our compassionate teacher. And the Buddha in this way taught in the world, and at the end of his life, in order to inspire sentient beings, he gave an appearance of being sick and also of passing beyond suffering at this site of Kushinagar. So that those sentient beings who are inclined to think that things last, that they will come to think that since even our amazing teacher, since this perfect being, the Buddha, also has to leave this world, and since his body as well dissolves, it is clear that I will have to very soon give up this body. And in order to then inspire sentient beings and make them recollect the facts of impermanence, he gave this appearance, and so proceeded to Kushinagar and appearing to pass beyond suffering. And so we prostrate to this space-like being, the Buddha, transcendent conqueror. So there are sacred sites in this way associated with the Buddha's life, where he was born, his palace, and so forth. In particular, the four sites of his birth, his enlightenment, his teaching, and the passing beyond. When we go, these are places where the Buddha went himself, and he blessed these places so that they are now permeated with the power and the blessings of enlightenment. And when we go there, and when we worship there, and when we practice there, then that powerful blessing can be received and will be received. It's also so that when the Buddha was cremated here at Kushinagar, then inconceivable relics manifested, major and minor relics, which are with us today and which are present in the world at various locations. And so when we worship and when we supplicate those relics, we also receive thereby the blessing of enlightenment. So it was for many profound purposes that the Buddha gave this appearance of passing beyond at the site of Kushinagar.
Okay, we did get Sancho, Simjo, Rinpoche, Maje, Bonam, Jeje, Jabanyam, Mabaya, Kone, Kondo, Bevarasho, Sonam de Tamje, Sebanye, Tomnanya, Bedana, Pamsine, Jaganaji, Bala, Dubai, Sebe, Tolendo,